Now that we have cut the rabbets on the ends of the ends and the grooves on the bottoms of the ends and on the sides, let's mark the outsides to cut a nice smooth curve on these things so that they're not just rectangular slabs. And also let's cut, and first we draw, but cut handholds on the ends. So let's take this guy and say we want to have this centered on here. So we have 13 3/4. So half of 13 is 6 1/2. And then half of 3/4 is, oh no, I moved it over to 1. So that's 6 1/2. 6 1/2, and then half of 3/4 is 3/8. So then we're going to come over here and mark off 3/8. And actually, let's bring this in. All right, so we've got, that's the center there, 6 3/8. And let's have our handhold be 2 inches on a side, so 4 inches long. Because if I grab this thing in my fist here, I can see 6 on this side and 10 on that side. So if I'm carrying it with just curling my fingers around, that'll be a little bit less than 4 inches, and 4 inches should be enough. So I've got 2 inches on either side of my center line mark. So that's 2 inches, and then this is 2 inches. And let's use a square to make sure that we lightly mark this straight down, and that'll be the outsides of my handhold. And then I want to have it be 1 inch up from the bottom, and let's see here, 1 inch up from the bottom, and 1 inch up from this bottom. And how far down from the top do we think here? Let's see here, 3/4 inches. That sounds about right. Let's do 3/4 inches down from the 3/4 inch thick handhold. So if I probably wouldn't be doing like that. So you really only need a little bit more than your finger thickness, and my finger thickness is a smidge over 1/2 inch. So 3/4 of an inch should be good. So, and yeah, this is the bottom. So this is the bottom towards me. 1 inch up from the top, 1 inch up from the bottom, which actually is going to be less than that once you account for the fact that the base is already, so on this side, the base is 1/4 inch up plus another almost 1/4 inch, so that's almost 1/2 inch up from the bottom. So almost 1/2 inch up, and then we're only going to have 1/2 inch there. But we want to make sure that we have enough on top so that if I'm lifting this, it's these wood fibers that are going to be holding up whatever it is that I'm holding in the tray. Also, hands tend to be rounded, so how about we round this over? Actually, before I do that, how about I connect these guys? So we're going to connect these guys. And let's round things over. So since this is 3/4 of an inch, in order to draw, we're going to want to use the next size up for the pencil to fit in there. And we want it 4 inches long. So what we're going to do is we're just going to round this over. I'm going to keep it at 4 inches long, so the top is up there at 4 inches. And round that over. Come down here, we do the same thing on this side. So get the ends like this. And we're using our template here. There we go. And now we have these guys, and we're gonna erase this, but we'll end up sanding it the rest of the way. We don't need these guys. And here we have what's going to become a handhold on our end. And we're going to do the same exact layout on the other guy. Now, this is still a rectangular slab. So how about we add in some nice curves on the top to make it a little bit more pleasing to the eye, and also get rid of the sharp corners that we have on there. So let's let's move it down a little bit, and then on the sides, we're also gonna have to cut those down, and we'll cut a curve on those guys down there also. So let's measure down a 1/2 inch on either side. Let's measure down this a 1/2 inch, because then we're gonna cut down the sides a little bit more than that. We don't want to cut them down too far. 1/2 inch on both those sides, and let's measure in 2.5 inches. That'll be enough, because we don't want to cut off too much of the top material and then weaken this too much. So 2.5, and we'll measure in 2.5 on this puppy as well. 2.5, and then let's grab this template again, and we'll draw a curve down and then draw a curve over. And so we want to have a curve down here. Do the same thing on this side. Curve down here. We can flip it upside down. Set this guy here. All right, so we've got, let's hold this in here so you can see. So we've got this curve here, so we have it making a nice little S curve there. So we'll cut this out on the scroll saw. Before we go and make our cuts with the scroll saw, we're going to need to cut into what's going to become the handholds, or drill into what's going to become the handholds, so that we can fit the blade through there, because we don't want to be cutting through the outside of the wood, because that would weaken the wood and completely defeat the purpose. So we need to drill a hole that's at least big enough for the blade to pass through, but because this is wide enough and long enough, we can drill a couple of holes that are side by side, and then we can fit the whole bracket through, and we don't need to take it off the blade. So we'll pick a side and drill into that. Now this is a keyed chuck, and we're going to insert this, tighten it by hand, but that's not going to be tight enough. So we need to make sure that we tighten it with the key. And we're going to do one at a time. Let's not play games with this. And before we turn it on, test to make sure that there's nothing in the way of the drive handle. And also this is, oh, that's awfully far down. We need to raise this up. All right, that's better. You can hold this securely. You can use a clamp, or you can do it by hand. This is long enough. You can hold it over here and have your hand well enough away from that. And let's make sure that we have our bit centered and it's not going to cross any lines. All right, so we're going to drill through and then put another hole close by so that then we can fit our bracket through. Okay, first hole drilled, and I started pretty close to the line. I had to move it away there. This is not quite big enough to fit the whole handle through, so I'm going to drill another one. All right, now the question is, they ended up overlapping a little bit. Will it fit? No, it will not. Not quite. What if I do it this way? Oh, I have to drill again. So we've got 3 holes that just touch each other. And let's see if I can slide this puppy through. Not quite. All right, but these are close enough and broken through. I'll just take a chisel and knock that back, and then we can fit this through, no problem. So I'll set that guy to the side, and we'll do the other guy. So we've got our holes here, side by side, and the last one's in the middle, so it's cutting evenly. And yeah, again, just a little bit, so I can get a chisel, knock that out, and then I don't have to take the blade out of the holders. Now we can make all of our cuts at the scroll saw. Workpiece is ready. We're over at the scroll saw. We're going to do one at a time, so this guy is off the table. When we thread the blade through. We need to make sure that the teeth are angled down. Let's see here, can I? All right, I don't know if you can see that. The teeth are angled down and the markings are up, and we want to make sure that the teeth are angled down into the markings so that when I put it like this, I can see the markings on the wood being up, but the teeth are angled down towards it because we want to be cutting down. And we're going to hook this into there, and hook this into there, tighten that down, tighten that. And when we start this, we want to have two things set up. Number one, our air hose pointed there to blow off all of the dust, but not actually touching. And we also want to make sure the blade is not touching the wood at all, and listen for the arm to make sure that there's no clackety-clack sound and it's nice and smooth running. All right, that means that everything is tightened properly. One last check to make sure that the table is flat. The angle measured down below says 0 degrees, so the table should be flat and the blade should be heading directly into the table at 90 degrees. So now we can make our cut, and remember, always make your cut on the waist side of the line. So we're going to stay in between all of these lines here, and we can take our time with this. There's no need to rush this. All right, the air handler does not seem to be blowing, so we need to adjust this. Yes, we do. We need to actually hook up the hose. All right, let's try that again. Aha! Success. Let's go back to cutting with dust collection. All right, handhold one, cut, and then we can cut the decorative curves on the ends. Once we take this puppy out, get out of my way. All right, so now we have the decorative guys on the hands. Now this guy, I cut inside the line here, and what we're going to do is we're going to round this over with a hand router because we don't want to have any 90-degree angles to catch our fingers on and start splitting. It'll help protect the wood because this is going to be touched by hands a lot. And on the top here also, we're going to do a lot of roundovers on this guy, and that will cover up any of these blemishes, like the fact that I missed the line here on the underside and it's got a bow there. The roundover will help with that. Let's cut out this guy, and then we'll do the other one. All right, decorative curves all cut, and we'll do the other one now. All right, now this guy can be finished up by hand with a rasp and then a hand router to round this over.